All right, Court Club, we are off the chart with our guest today, and we're kicking it off here with our continuing mental skills. We're into our on-court communication, and so today's guest, I have a long bio here, and I'm going to shorten it up. But Coach Charles Lee, who sits on Mike Budenholzer's bench for the Milwaukee Bucks, in my opinion, one of the great young coaches in the NBA, and I've seen him in action. He is amazing. He has a Bucknell background. He was a 2006 Patriot Player of the Year, a tremendous dominant player for Bucknell for years. He went overseas and played in Israel and Europe, came back and did a little Wall Street, then went to Bucknell as an assistant coach, and then had the tenure when Mike Budenholzer went to the Hawks. He was there with Coach Budenholzer and then came to Milwaukee, and as you guys know, the Bucks are pretty good, and Charles Lee is one of the reasons that they are. He does a phenomenal job with our players, and notice I said "are," I have to be careful with that, but they are. I feel they're our players. But he does a phenomenal job. So thanks for being with us for this really important topic.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me, and thanks for the kind words, Ed.
Okay, let's jump in. So, as a Division I athlete and as a Division I coach, you have perceptions of people in the officiating business. Some are good. Sometimes we get labels. When you see somebody that, for some reason, at the end of the day, you really like, you say, well, like, you know, that guy I can trust. I believe. What are the things that make Charles Lee feel that way about a person who's refereeing his game?
Well, I would say first and foremost, when I come into a game, I recognize that between the players, between the coaches, between the officials, we're all just trying to put together a great game for the fans. I think there's a lot of preparation that goes into it from a player standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, and from an official standpoint. And so having that compassion, that empathy for, we all have a hard job here in this spectrum of entertainment, which is what ultimately this is. We all have a hard job. And so if I can kind of break down some of the barriers from the jump and go over to an official at the beginning of the game and say, hey, how are you doing? Good to see you, Mark Lindsay, Ed Rush, whoever the crew is that day, to use their names and introduce myself. I think right there, we are already starting to kind of like even the playing field. And it's like, hey, we're all in this together. I understand you have a job to do. I have a job to do. And it's not me coming with the mindset of the officials are trying to really screw us over tonight. And they're trying to do this to me, or they're trying to do it to Giannis or whomever the players are too. It's nothing personal. And I think that mindset helps me, number one, that we're all kind of like on the same playing field. And we're all in this together. And so if I can start to build that relationship at the beginning of the game, I know you and I spoke one time, even from the standpoint of the officials. So like, I'm going to try to use their name. Mark Lindsay's a perfect example. One game, I'm an assistant in Atlanta. I think it was my first year sitting on the front of the bench. I could have even been a back of the bench assistant. And the fact that he just said to me, hey, what's up, Charles? Pennsylvania's finest or Bucknell's finest. And I'm just like,
wow.
Huh? You took time to know who the assistant coaches were on Mike Budenholzer's staff. We don't have that much interaction. I'm a fairly new coach in the league. That meant a lot to me. And so his name, that interaction will forever stick with me. And because of that, I actually have a lot more respect for officials because I do think that they're all trying and stuff. So,
wait, I want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I want to make sure that nobody misses that. I mean, that is key. So Mark Lindsay did his homework, and he realized that Charles Lee had Pennsylvania roots and played in Bucknell, Patriot League, etc. Enough that he can make a comment to him, you know, and we've had comments about, well, are we being political? No, that's being smart, right? You're connecting there. So Mark Lindsay right there took the whole thing and changed the whole label perception by knowing your name, and then he had a little bio also with that. Actually, Rob has some examples of things that he has done recently where that has happened. So right away, the glass is half full. He starts at 100, not 0, right? And so you're a little more understanding of
Definitely.
what can happen. Okay.
Hey, Ed, the word I think of as Charles tells that story is connection. So for those of you that don't know Mark Lindsay's background, he's from suburb of Philadelphia. So Mark, when he went to Charles with the Bucknell University comment, that wasn't just something he picked out because he knew Charles went to Bucknell. Mark was able to connect his background with Charles to create kind of this like level playing field, as you said, and made an authentic connection.
Right.
Which meant a lot more because I don't know if you knew Charles at the time that Mark was from outside Philadelphia, but I'm sure over the years you have learned that, and then it started to make sense how he recognized that your time at Bucknell.
For sure. It's funny you say that because after our interaction, I actually went online and started researching his bio a little bit more in depth, and I saw that. So,
we're trying to find officials are trying to find common ground with coaches, and knowing that you're telling me that really means an awful lot. Now,
it does.
Right.
Another example, if you don't mind,
please,
kind of in that same world, because every now and then, maybe you know somebody's name, you didn't do enough to recognize they went to Bucknell. The holiday season was just around. To just say, hey, Merry Christmas.
Right.
Any holiday plans? Like family, whatever it is, to your point of connection, just finding that little thread that kind of just like unites us and breaks down the pressure of the situation that we're all kind of in.
Right.
Charles, how about a guy grabs you in warm-ups and says, hey, Charles, saw you had 28 the other night at Holy Cross. What would that mean to you?
It's part of that homework process, and it lets me know this guy watches the game. He understands what's going on in the flow of the game and the whole environment and the physicality of screens. And this isn't him just showing up for a Saturday game to make a little bit of money and to just be a part of a NCAA Division I game, Division II game, a high school game. You're not looking for it's not about you and like your pride and your ego. It's about, I watch basketball and like I think that you're a good player or whatever, but like I watch basketball to understand how am I officiating and how am I sequencing things. It helps. That just shows me you're doing a lot of homework.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful.
So that starts. That really starts in warm-ups, and I know Ed, you've worked on that with me. And we had an example the other day of a member who was sharing an example with us of a play that happened with like 4 minutes to go in the game, and the official gets the play right, but he gets a lot of pushback, and there's not a lot of buy-in. And I said to the official, I said, well, how much did you work on this part of what we're talking about today in the first 36 minutes of the game? And he kind of had this look like, no, I really haven't. Yeah. And so now with 4 minutes to go in a really tough game, now he has to have interaction. And so to that point, somebody that's interacted with you in warm-ups and throughout the game, and now there may be a play you don't like later in the game, are you going to give them more not leniency, but more of a benefit of the doubt, if you will?
Yes.
And maybe communicate with them differently rather than, air punching or putting your hands up or being aggressive. You may go over and say, hey, can I ask you a question? What do you need me to do on that play?
For sure. I agree with you. This is a relationship business. Like I think I threw out like entertainment before too, but like it's also a big relationship business. So as a coach, if I don't have a relationship with the players, I'm not able to coach them. I'm not able to put them in the right spots or get through to them and really help push the right buttons to make them as successful as they possibly can be. And I think you have to have a relationship with the official. And like you said, it starts in warmups, and we need to have multiple conversations, because my first conversation with you, and I think about this as from a coach to a player, the first time I go talk to Chris Middleton, it can't be, what are you doing? Why aren't you doing it? But we actually have to have had a couple film sessions, and he's got to go through some things with me. And then all of a sudden, after 5-10 interactions, now we've built this trust, this relationship, where I can now dig into him for a mistake he's made multiple times. And it goes the same way for officials. If we're talking the whole game, this, that, and the other, and then now when I really see a play and we've kind of been talking, maybe now I can go off and you're kind of like, okay, I see where he's coming from. We've spoken.
Well, members, he just put an exclamation point on something that we mentioned last week, and that was, we gave him this, Charles. It was rules without relationships equals rebellion.
Ooh,
So think
like
about
that.
that. Think about that. So
Yeah.
you just put an exclamation point on that. And we stole that from a Division I official who works a high level and was involved in the national championship game last year. And that's kind of something that he lives by. And I think what you just said is a specific example of that.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Well,
I wrote down that jewel too. I'll be keeping that.
Yeah, that's the Buck staff. I mean, you guys are so strong in relationship. So let's touch on when things get sideways. And I know that, you know, where you sit next to the head coach when he is sitting. I know you sit to his right. And there's times when you have a role, and this is very common for assistant coaches. I think referees have to know that you have a role. I see at times of being the voice of reason.
Mhm.
I mean, we're playing an emotional game, and stuff happens, and it's hard to just sit there. We're not going to sit there with our legs crossed all the time. You know, our emotions go places. So
For sure.
let's go back now. We've talked about the strength of developing that common ground, those relationships. Now we got stuff that's gone sideways, and we got a lot of things going on, and it's all spinning around. And the whole idea here is we got to find a way to get back to filtering the emotions and get to a somewhat of a mistake recovery strategy, whether the officials are wrong or whether they're not, perception, but you know, it happens. I mean, a lot of games it happens more than once. So let's talk about how you navigate through that. But I'm sure you realize you have that role at times.
Oh, definitely. Oh, we recognize it.
Yeah.
But I would say the two words that kind of come to mind off the top of my head are the tone that you are now going to present your argument as a coach and the timing of it. I think that even when things go sideways, things are intense, if I'm going to talk to you kind of like I am now, like maybe you're a little bit more stern, but it's like, hey, you know, we've talked to whatever it is, but your tone doesn't need to go from 0 to 100 all the time. And like, you can be an effective communicator with the right tone, where the other person's actually not feeling like they're being demeaned or talked down to. And because we've built this common ground in this relationship, there can be a better tone. The timing part for me, I talk to some of the players sometimes about this too. If you want to talk to an official in the middle of a play, when, you know, let's be honest, sometimes players, they just miss shots and they're looking and they're embarrassed and now they're going to look for a way out of it. And in that light, if you're all of a sudden going to try to talk to an official with a crazy tone in the middle of the game, you've now shown them up. And now you're embarrassing them, and now you're making it about yourself. That's not good for the relationship. It's not good for the game.
Right.
Because even as an outsider, as a fan, that's one of the biggest things I think sometimes with the NBA is just the interactions with the players and the officials. So as a coach, I think the right time, and I'm trying to work on this. I think you and I have spoke about this, Ed. Timeout comes, and the pressure situation has calmed down a little bit too. I think that you're walking over to an official and you're having these conversations with them. And that's much better than Darvin Ham and I joke about this sometimes about we wouldn't want an official to be in our timeout, watch us draw up an ATO, and then we don't score it. And he'd be like, your ATO stinks. So like, have a little bit of compassion and empathy for your tone and timing of when you're doing things.
Right. Okay. So members, lesson learned here. What Charles said is that we should try to navigate the interaction to dead ball, not live ball. So there's things that we can say and do during live ball if we're approached. Sometimes, Rob, I know people say, hey, hold on, I'll get back to you. And wait till the whistle blows and the clock stopped, and then say, okay, I'm here. What do you have?
For sure.
Now, okay, it's never perfect. And so I see many times this interaction occurs. I see the nonverbals with the officials, a defensive mode. Like, you know, they're putting up the walls or crossing their arms. You know, the whole thing is like, leave me alone, that kind of thing. So that's got to affect, if you're going over to somebody and all of a sudden you see something that not quite welcoming.
For sure.
Right? It's got to affect the way you approach or how you feel about interacting with that official.
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. Because now I'm feeling you're going to put up walls and barriers. You're semi disrespecting me. You're not approachable. And I'm competitive. And now that I feel like there is no trust there, I actually feel like now I've gone from a place of, okay, we're all trying to work together, to actually, you're kind of working against me. And now I'm competing against the other team and I'm competing against an official. And then you might not get the best side of that coach.
Okay. So you said a word there, kind of got my attention, approachable. So to define that, what does that look like to you when you see, as far as an official is concerned, what is approachable? What does that look like?
So if I say something to you, hey, can you watch the moving screens? And I love it when the officials will kind of be like, well, which moving screen are you talking about, coach? Well, I probably shouldn't throw this guy's name out there because he gets up, but Gortat, he's moving from here to there. His screens are wide. Can you watch? And then now he's like, oh, well, actually, I think that he's kind of within his restrictions and that's great. There's times though when you talk to an official and it's like, hey, what do you think about the moving screens? And I didn't watch that. I don't see what you're talking about. And it's just very short. It's very brief. And there's always this excuse of like, I'm looking somewhere else. Like, that's not what I'm supposed to be looking for. That's not my call. Well, I understand that sometimes people are looking in different, but you can give me a little bit more insight as to, okay, what's going on in this play.
Okay. Wow. Wow. What do you? So that wasn't your
Charles. Charles, you just brought home a couple points for me, and I don't want the members to miss this. And I'm gonna put in my game and put an emphasis on this. Is I heard you say they asked for a specific, and we've actually taught that over the years of a form of communication is when players or coaches are asking about plays, try to get them, the famous, hey, the fouls are 8-1. Well, which play are you concerned with, right?
Right.
So what you just told me was when an official asks you for your feedback on a particular specific, that is basically a cue to have a little bit of open dialogue, which in turn you appreciate.
Yeah.
It shows a little empathy from the officiating.
Definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah. So and that was a great example you gave, because we do get that a lot. In the games I officiate, hey, the screens are ugly, or and for me now to say, hey, which screen are you talking about? And now that promotes a little bit of back and forth, as opposed to what you just said. No, screens are legal, or you really don't give any merit to what you just brought to our attention. So that was a really good point, and I think hopefully that our members can pick up on that. And additionally, I just had a question. I know Ed talked about you being a voice of reason now on the bench, and in our game, the college game, it's thought of as a coach's game. But I think oftentimes we can build layers within the players that can now help us with the coaches. And so go back to your time at Bucknell, and I think we would agree you played for a guy that could get excitable, and at times a voice of reason could help. And so tell me, were there times as a player, and obviously you were a respected player, but when an official would show you that level of respect, that maybe you served as a voice of reason as a player?
Oh,
maybe
for sure.
It's a huddle, or
Yeah, well, one of the things that I thought helped me, first of all, like you said, Coach Flan could kind of go crazy at times, but I think that between him and his staff of Prosser and Goodman, they did a great job of sitting down, talking to me, because I was a little fiery and very competitive as well as we all are in the sport. Going back to this timing thing and being able to, hey, at a free throw, if as a player you want to go over to an official and talk to him, and they also taught me something about like touch. So like if you put your hand on an official's shoulder and like, hey, whoever the official is that they've robbed, what I do on that play, what can I do better? At that point, now there was like this open line of communication, and I think that helped give me a little bit more leeway with the officials. Also, sometimes I would actually admit be like, hey, Rob, that was a good call, but I'm gonna get yelled at now by coach because I just, didn't come over and I fouled a guy and we're supposed to not be fouling. So I think that humility is great too. And I guess kind of taking this to another realm, sometimes I think that's what bothers coaches from the referee standpoint is we have some humility, not everybody, and we can be like, hey, we messed up on that call. Like, hey, can you watch this play at halftime? And Coach Bud does a great job of he'll come out at halftime and be like, hey, I watched that clip. I was wrong. But then when you turn around and you go back to the officials and you're like, hey, what's going on with this play? And there's no humility there to be like, you know what? I just missed it, to be honest. Like, I think you might be right. He might have got hit and I kind of missed it. Now there's this like tension and this battle of if I can admit I'm wrong, why can't you?
Right.
We're all human.
Right. That is
Well,
critical.
and you said something.
Critical.
Yeah. Big
Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
And you said something there about touch, and we've always encouraged our officials not to touch players or coaches, but I think from our perspective, the other component of that is just think of it as proximity and distance. We don't necessarily have to come up and touch you as a player, but I think if I come up and get side by side and maybe lean in non-verbally, that could be just as effective, and just kind of closing the distance. So now our conversation is just you and I, as opposed to out in front of everybody.
That's a great point.
One other thing I wanted to get your perspective on as a player is the meaningfulness of an official coming to you and saying, Charles, hey, that last screen you set was getting close. You're right on the edge. Just clean those up a little bit, or whatever it may be, or about a scenario. Hey, I don't want to make 3 seconds my best call tonight. I need you to help me get out of it, right? So if an official does that to you, maybe during dead ball, or does that hold any weight with you? Do you respect the fact of, well, he could have just blew his whistle and called something marginal rather than talking?
It definitely helps me. Now, whether or not I listen is up to me. But no, I think that helps a ton.
Yeah, I see at times watching our games that I think that everybody can do a better job with that. I mean, just like a simple thing like calling defense in 3 seconds, which sometimes can be marginal. And there's times where you'd say, okay, I'm gonna put that in my file. Next time there's a dead ball, hey Brooke, listen, you need to clear the lane a little faster. Don't let me have to call one of those things. And you actually use the rule to prevent. But I think at all levels, there's things that happen, I think, that are marginal, that if we communicate now, so I guess having that line of communication early on is going to be helpful to be able to talk through those things.
And half of the communication too, because kind of to your point of like even like a defense of 3 seconds, I noticed an official a couple games ago while the play's going on, kind of just standing there like, who you guarding, Brooke, or whoever was there, and kind of within the game, just trying to give you a heads up before I call it. And you will either take heed to the warning or you will continue to sit there and then I'm going to call it. But like, I've actually tried to assist you in this process. And that's where this feel and like just figuring out what is going to be kind of your niche and your voice as an official and also a coach. Cause I think that there's different ways to skin a cat.
Right. Well, Rob, as we kind of do a wrap up, I want to, just an overall thought here is that we have some officials who they're just not going to talk and they're going to do their job and they'll answer a question with 1 or 2 words. But the communication thing is they're just trying to get the plays right. And usually that's experience. And there's other officials that will only speak when spoken to. And that's kind of their MO. We're trying to encourage people to be a little more purposeful and intentional and initiate at times, where you just so people know you're there and know that you care and that you're actually plugged into what's happening. And so that to me leaves a format where then when things go crazy, I've got a better chance to recover of those 3 things. Do you see the difference of those 3 things? And I mean, I'm sure that even in the NBA, I know we do. We have those levels.
You're right. And the word that you kind of hit on, purposeful communication, sometimes is clutch. Even little things where after a timeout, kind of to your purpose thing, where you're just ongoing communication, but it's purposeful. There'll be times we're going out to a timeout and an official will walk by our timeout and be like, hey, bud, just so you know, ball's going to be over here on this side. Or, hey, just so you know, short shot clock here, 14, ball's underneath. And you didn't say a lot. You didn't help draw up an ATO. It wasn't about a foul, but like you're just kind of having some purposeful dialogue of this is where the ball is. You got this on the clock. I think that type of stuff, when we all kind of just feel like there's this open line of communication, it's just so healthy, and it allows the game to just be the game, and then there's not this distraction of the tension between officials and players.
Right. That is beautiful. Look, it's not going to be a love fest. I mean, it's competition, and there's always going to be, as long as they're keeping score and both teams are trying, there's going to be difference of opinion. And how well we do and how well we officiate the game, how well the game's played for aesthetics for the players is really how we navigate through those rough spots. Because every game's going to have them. You can't avoid it. It's just the way it is. But at a certain time, I think some people do a much better job than others. Rob, you have anything in closing? This is tremendous. This is really, really good. We can take this and do a 2-hour workshop on just the things you gave us here. Exceptional.
Yeah, I think, and this is a rhetorical question, but I just want Charles to kind of, put a bold font on this thing here. But there's really no downside to trying any of this, right, Charles?
None.
I mean,
like, it does not hurt to try, and that's the biggest thing. Like, I would love to get across, like you said, Rob.
Yeah.
It's and a lot of lesser experienced officials struggle with this, and because they maybe don't necessarily know what to say, but just a little icebreaker. Like, I mean, I'm sure when Mark Lindsay said Bucknell University, it probably kind of took you back and put a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh boy, somebody knows about the Patriot League. Finally, I don't have to hear about Darvin Ham's Texas Tech breaking the backboard. Like, there's more to basketball than hook 'em horn.
I forgot about that.
All right.
But yeah, I appreciate everything you've brought for us today. This is going to be really good. And again, just members, listen to just the impact that it had with Charles, and go out and try it in your next game. And we're excited to hear your stories.
Absolutely. Yeah, members, this is tremendous stuff. Charles Lee, you're great. You know how much respect I have for you, and I'm looking forward to rooting for you when you become the head coach of wherever. But it's going to happen, and I know that you'll be ready because you're really good at what you do. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Rob. And make sure both of you have your contracts ready to come be my official consultants then if I get that job.
All right, man.
All right, you guys.